Well, guys, I just cleaned up the shop a little bit. I finished up a big batch of knives, and I haven't put out a video in a while, so I thought I'd hit the next question in line. Like at the end of all my videos, I always say drop a comment, shoot me a message if you have any questions. So today I'm going to talk about belt grinders a little bit and like the progression of them, pros, cons, what you need as far as if you're a beginner, intermediate, So I do this full time, so I've progressed from like the lowest end 1x30 belt grinder. Now I've got a really nice 2x72. And when I started, I wasn't exactly sure. If you browse different websites and look at these grinders, when they're $2,500, $3,000, I didn't understand what, why are people paying so much money for these grinders and all this stuff? And now that I use one every single day, it just all kind of makes sense. So when I started just kind of tinkering with it maybe 5-6 years ago, I bought one of those 1x30 belt grinders that you can get at Harbor Freight. I think they're maybe 50-60 bucks, and they work great for just starting out. You can profile, you can put your bevels, you can do everything you need to do with them, but they lack in power and in adjustability. They're only one speed. And the belts wear out fast because they're a 1x30. There's a lot of downsides to it, but there's been a few videos lately, people making knives with them, and they work great if you just want to maybe make your first knife, make a few for friends, this and that. They work great. The next step from there was one of these 2x42 grinders. Hopefully you guys can kind of see it. This one is a Palmgren brand. And it has like a little disc sander on the side, which I actually still use this disc sander for flattening scales a little bit. You can see this needs to be replaced, but I just used this yesterday actually. So this one is a single speed grinder, on-off switch. It's actually a really good quality machine. I think these are around 250 bucks, okay? And I would definitely recommend one of these if you're getting started. If you think you're gonna make a few knives here and there and just want to tinker with it, it's a great step up from that 1x30 as far as power goes, and as far as your belt's lasting longer and more belt availability. You can get pretty much every belt in a 2x42 that you can get in a 2x72, and they work really good. So I used this grinder I bet I used this for 6 or 8 months before I upgraded to a 2x72. And the main reason why I upgraded is it was getting a little more serious. I was starting to kind of turn it more into a job. I was making a lot more knives. And the main issue that I ran in with this grinder is that there's no adjustability for speed. So if you are shaping some handles, especially like hardwood, stuff like that, you need to slow the belt down or else you just burn up your belts. So there's a lot of things that when you get into it a little more and more, you realize that adjustability is super important. So if you could take this grinder and put some sort of variable speed drive on it or something like that, it would be great and it would work really good. The power on these is, adequate. You can profile with them, you can do everything. You can stop the belt while doing it if you push hard enough and you're hogging off some material. So they work okay, and I would definitely recommend them as far as a budget grinder. Get you going, you'll understand it a little more. You can make a fantastic knife with this grinder with no issues. The next step up from this, I upgraded to a 2x72, not this one. I actually sold it to a buddy of mine, but it's one of those OBM 2x72s. It's the bright yellow one that you see everywhere that everybody has. I think you can buy those for like I think at the time I bought it maybe 3 years ago, they were $500-600 bucks for basically the base machine, and you got a tool rest, a work rest, you got a flat platen with it, but no motor. And what I did is, and I'm not gonna get into details on how to do this or whatever because there's a ton of videos online, but I took an old treadmill motor and converted it to work on it. And you can buy the drive wheel directly from them, that OBM company. And I think it cost me around $20 to build a variable speed controller for that treadmill motor. Like I said, I'm not going to get into it because it was you had to buy a couple different little things, like an AC to D or a DC to AC voltage converter and all this stuff, but it basically was a free motor and speed controller for, well, not free, it was like 20 bucks or whatever, but it worked awesome. Mine was a 3 horsepower motor I had on that, and it worked awesome. Those OBM machines are, I think, pretty much the cheapest 2x72 grinder you can get, and they work good. They're just overall, it's a good step up. I wouldn't recommend it if you're a full-time knife maker. I wouldn't recommend it. There's a few little quality control issues with them, some tracking issues, and my main problem was the customer service I had with them wasn't that great. And I'm not going to go into it, but I realized I used that machine for probably a year, maybe 2 years, something like that. And I finally was able to upgrade to one of these, this is the Beaumont TX grinder, which this one's about $3,000. And it was the one that I remember a long time ago I looked at and I was like, there's no way I'll ever buy one of those. But now that I do this every day, you realize how important it is to have a machine that you can rely on and trust, and you know that you're not going to have any issues with it. And if you do have issues, KMG is just an awesome company to have to deal with. So that's a lot of it. When people say, well, I run an OBM 2x72, they're awesome, they work great. That's awesome, and use it as long as you can. And for me, I had a couple issues with mine that put me down for a week at a time, and I couldn't afford to do that. I mean, it really threw off my whole schedule and everything. So, but kind of getting sidetracked on that, the 2x72 upgrade was definitely the best step. You've got every belt you can imagine, and the price of the belts is a lot better. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck when you jump up to those 2x72 belts. If you are making knives and you're turning it into a little side hustle and you want to step it up, definitely, put a little money aside, get a 2x72. It makes your money back really quick, and definitely get one with a VFD, because, or do what I did and make your own VFD. That worked fine for a long time, and actually the guy that bought it from me is still using it, and it works great. But being able to adjust your speed just really helps save belts. You don't burn up belts as fast. And like what I do is, if I grind a bevel in a knife, I'll start off full speed with a 36 grit belt, and as you progress up to a 220 or 400, I slow it down and down and down. So it makes it to where you're less heat build up on those belts, and they just last a lot longer. So if you have any questions about the VFD, that was a few people commented about that. Feel free to ask them, and I'll try to help answer them. But this setup here, the TX, I got it with the VFD, and I think it came with a 2 horsepower motor, and I just wired it to 110 right now. You can wire it to 220 for a little more power or whatever, but it does pretty much everything you can imagine. This one, I just have it with a flat plate right here. It goes horizontal and vertical, as you can see, and then I've got another tool rest that comes up, and you can work there. So once you kind of get into knife making a little more, you'll start realizing why a grinder like this is super beneficial. And for me, it was just like I kept kind of putting a little money aside, and finally was able to get this grinder, and I don't regret anything about it. It's literally been perfect. So hopefully that covers a lot of your questions that you've been having. I've just had a lot of people say, hey, what grinder would you recommend for this and this and this? And that kind of covers everything. If you're going to get into this and think you're going to do it full time, or even just really create a cool side hustle, investing in quality tools is something that I can't stress enough. And I'm finally starting to do that. If you saw my last video, I've got a nice even heat oven coming. And as far as a business goes, knife making, you don't have a ton of huge expenses and startup costs for if you look at it as a business. The other business I had, you got to have a big building and a bunch of machinery and a bunch of equipment. And with this, you can kind of pick away at it and, buy stuff as you need it, and which is really nice. So If you guys have any more questions, I think I covered everything. I'm not going to go super in detail on this grinder because there's about 100 different grinder companies, and I'm sure they're all really, really nice now. But this was, you know, KMG's been in the business forever, and their new TX grinder really just fit everything that I wanted as far as it goes vertical, goes horizontal. Everything about it is super thick. There's some videos, and I've done a video kind of in detail on this grinder. They just beefed everything up. Like all the plating is super thick steel construction. It's super heavy. So you can tell it's just built to last. And I've been running this thing every single day since I got it. And I have not had one issue with it at all. So if you look at it as a business, time is money. This thing, it's not costing me any time. I never have to fool with anything. It just works, and it's worth every penny. So, okay, I think I'm done with this rant. If you guys have any more questions, comments, anything about grinders, I'd love to help answer them. Just because I was, you know, 5 years ago, I was kind of in the same kind of new position to where, you know, why do you want to spend so much money on a grinder? And hopefully this answered a couple of your questions. So I'm going to end it here. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or videos for the future you want me to cover, anything like that. Just let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.